Okay, so what this is going to demonstrate is integrating Netdata with Checkmk. This isn't a full-scale integration by any means. This is more of kind of an integration of linkage to make things a little bit easier. It's going to show off some features of Checkmk. Checkmk is what we use for our primary monitoring and alerting and long-term data trending. It's pretty robust. It handles a lot of different pieces of equipment and services. Netdata is a project that's primarily centered on Unix hosts and more specifically Linux hosts. So not Windows, for example. It shows live data, so not what has happened, but what is happening now. Now they have tried to add, well, before I even get into that, let's take a look at the dashboard here, or the host. I just wanted to give you a brief demo. When I click onto a host icon that has the little green dot next to the Linux logo's foot in the bottom right, that's going to take me to its live Netdata information. You can see this is more like live data, what is happening right now on a system. So where Netdata excels in the presentation of real-time data, and they have been over time gradually adding the ability to handle longer term data. So it's kind of interesting. Netdata has been trying to add better alerting and long-term capture of data for trending and such. Checkmk, if you will, has been trying to gravitate more towards adding more dynamic and real-time data to its system. So it's interesting, these two products, which were somewhat complementary, are trying to move towards each other with regards to feature sets that are provided. So for me, when we started this project, Netdata's focus was certainly, its strength was on real time. Checkmk was certainly, its strength was on long-term data, and so that's how we've chosen to implement it. But you can see why, at least just based on that, why you would want both. So what we want to do is talk about how to add these icons into your Checkmk for this kind of integration. As we see it just on these Linux hosts, and then also how to add in entries into the menu, like in the view under applications, have a Netdata cloud view. So if we were to click into that, this is going to take me to the cloud view. This is something that Netdata has set up that allows you to claim hosts and then be able to view their data together. In this case, we have all of our development hosts, though I have them grouped by service right now instead of just normally. Let me group them by nothing here. Just a second. Anyway, you basically claim hosts, put them inside of a room that you want to associate them all together, and then you can see all your graphs together for that particular room for all your nodes. If you click on any of these, you'll get back to going into your Netdata view, for the host, just like what we were doing before, where we were getting the external pop-up in the Netdata view. So I want to talk about how to set that up inside of Checkmk. So first, let me tell you that when you're going to set this up in Checkmk, there's a couple of assumptions. One of the big assumptions being your name, your host inside of Checkmk is the name of the host on the network for your Netdata. So no funny business changing your, having different host name inside of Checkmk versus what you have inside of Netdata. So that's one assumption. The other assumption is that we're going to use a reverse proxy to get to our Netdata hosts. This is not unusual because in Netdata it didn't used to handle SSL requests. Everything was HTTP. So I'm going to make the assumption that we're still going to bank on HTTP only to our Netdata hosts. And so I want to front end it with an SSL. And by having a centralized one, it makes it easier to set up inside of Checkmk because I can basically route URL requests to the same host with just a parameter specifying what the host name is for its Netdata information. And then once we have that, we'll be able to better integrate that. So I want to show you how to do that underneath the web. So the reverse proxy, that is, I'm going to use or assume that our Netdata host itself, which has a web server. So we'll assume the Apache running under Netdata itself is going to be the place where I want to set up my reverse proxying, and then I'm going to show you how to set that up. So this is a CentOS host. Here is the SSL conf inside of the HTTP confd directory, and I've added a new virtual host. I've also told the server to listen on port 19443 HTTPS. I set up a virtual host. I gave it a document root, which isn't really necessary here because we're doing a proxy situation. And then the rest of it is pretty much your normal SSL data until we get to the proxy information, which I put at the bottom of this virtual host just to force me to have to scroll for that. So let me go ahead and we have error log places for this stuff too that I defined. But if we go clear down to the bottom of this, so just normal SSL stuff where your certs are. If we go to the bottom of this file, you'll see where we've got our proxy information. We've turned on the rewrite engine. We've got the proxy pass match is where the real magic happens. This is where we're saying if you go to this host at 19443/netdata/ and then we capture the information between that and the next slash, that's going to be basically your host name. We're going to redirect that to HTTP non-secure, that host name that we captured, port 19999, and then we're going to glue on the rest of whatever you might have provided in that URL. So preserving so that we can click around in it just as if we were in the actual Netdata and not going through a proxy. And then I've got a couple of rewrite rules there that I can't remember if are actually used or needed anymore, where I was trying to add a trailing slash, but that you'll have to tell me if that if that's what's needed or not. I can't remember if that was something I was messing around with. And then of course the end of our virtual host. So once you have that set up, and then you have it saved, and you've restarted your HTTPD service. In my case, basically restarted your Apache so that it's got this proxy information in it. And you could do this with however you set up a proxy. And of course, this doesn't even have to be on the Checkmk server itself. It could be on any host you wanted to. But you just need to be able to set up some kind of reverse proxy to make it easy to say, go to the reverse proxy, and then part of the URL's got to contain the host name in order to show the Netdata information. So now how do I integrate it? If you go to Global Services, there's something that maybe a lot of you haven't looked at. If you search for Action, you'll see a section for custom icons and actions. Normally you wouldn't have anything here. I've already got 4 things in here. This is how you would add icons and or menu items. You just add new element to add a new element. Like I said, yours probably won't have anything initially. Well, may, but probably not. So what we've done here is I've added in two, let me scroll up here. If I can. I'm waiting on my own video. I recorded this before I talked over it. So I'm going to add in two entries, not just one. And the reason is because there can be icon actions, there can be menu actions. And if you have something set up to be an icon action to show in a column, it cannot be used as a menu item action. I'm not sure why that is, but that's the way it is. So these things are virtually identical. I just renamed them two different things, SK Netdata versus SK Netdata Menu. And the URL is the same with the, which is where our macro substitution is going to come in. So we have the icon, I put a custom icon. We have the different icon for the icon that's shown next to icons, and then we have the icon that is shown next to the menu item. So I use the little tux logo with the green Netdata for the right foot. But then the URL line, we'll see that we'll have the link to our, the URL of where our Checkmk site is, except now it's port 19443/Netdata, and then we capture, I said we did in the reverse proxy, that's where your host name goes, and we're going to pull in the macro from Checkmk for the host name here, and then we hard coded in the rest of our domain path in there, and then index HTML. So this builds that linkage so that when I click on it for a particular host, the host name comes in there right there. And the show in column, as I mentioned, gets it into a column icon, which is distinct from, unfortunately, menu items. So once you do that, you can no longer use this rule inside of a menu item. It'll just disappear. So we'll need two. We have to have two definitions, one for the icon and then this one down here, which is basically the same. Except now this one is the one I'm going to use inside of menus, and this can be used inside of host menus as well as service menus, and we're going to actually use it in both places. But now we can set up rules. So in your rules, again, type action, just like we did for the global settings. Inside of actions, you'll see down here in the user interface section, custom icons and actions for host. And here's the ones that I have defined. You'll see where I have my two Netdata rules, one for the icon and one for a menu item. And we'll click into these just so you can see what's going on. So let's start with the host icon. So it's going to show up as an icon next to a host and a host status. And we're going to select our rule. Once you have your rules defined, the global settings will show up here as a drop-down list, and you'll be able to pick. So we're going to pick our icon one, which is the SK Netdata, and then we've got to tell it, well, what hosts is this icon I'm going to be associated with. And I have added label conditions for SKOS is Linux and Netdata is true. Now these tags can be set manually on your hosts. In our case, we use Ansible, and Ansible is actually going to automatically add these labels. I shouldn't call them tags. These labels, because these are done as host labels, is going to add these labels into our systems automatically on provisioning. So if a Linux item is provisioned, it has SKOS Linux. If we add in the Netdata piece to that host, it's going to have Netdata true. And so that's done automatically, but you can certainly do it manually. So just as long as you have some way of selecting which host this rule should apply to. Okay, and we chose to do it this way. Now let's take a look at the other one. This would be the one for the menu. So very much the same thing, except this time instead of SK Netdata, I'm going to use SK Netdata Menu, but very much the same, right? So just choose my rule, and then the same kind of rule decision making goes with regards to where does this rule apply, and it's going to apply in the case of OS Linux and Netdata true. Now, if I That gets us the item for the host, for the menu for the host. But we can also do services, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that menu item also to the check_mk service. That's the master service menu. Just because, hey, if we've got an opportunity, who knows what people are going to click on to try to get to the Netdata information. So I'm going to add it there as well. So same rule, SK Netdata menu, Linux OS, Netdata true, but now check_mk $sign to tell it to go to that service. So now if I go to my host, I can see this. So not only do we have the icon, which gets us that pop-up, takes us to the site, we also have this menu item for the host. And then if we click into the host itself, and we go into the Checkmk service menu, because we told it Checkmk for that service, we wanted a Netdata. We'll have a Netdata option there too. So now there's like 3 different ways that you can link into your Netdata, and of course you could add more if you wanted to, but I think that's probably what you want. So finally, we have the idea of we want to get something into our views over here on the left menu. And so under applications, we have Netdata Cloud. You want to hit the edit button of your view section, and you want to go up and click on dashboards at the top. And you can see that we already have a Netdata Cloud dashboard here, and we could edit that and look at it, but just in all fairness, there's not a whole lot here. It's just basically a blank entry where there's nothing associated with it. There's no search parameters or whatever. It's just an entry. In fact, it'd probably help us if we just created a new dashboard, so that you can kind of get the idea of how these things look. So create a new dashboard, and you just ignore all this stuff about specific objects. Just say continue, and then you're going to fill in the data about your dashboard. And so we had Netdata Cloud, let's call this Netdata Cloud 2, and give it a Netdata Cloud 2 title. And then topic is where it's going to go, or what section it's going to go to. We had it in applications before, we'll put it in applications again. So we'll have 2 items in there, Netdata Cloud and Netdata Cloud 2. Normally you would change your visibility and make this dashboard available for other users, but we're just doing a test here, so I'm not going to do that right now. So this will just show up for me for right now. So it's not going to mess up anybody who's looking at our system. They won't be able to see this until we publish it. But we're not going to publish this because we've already published in Netdata Cloud. Alright, we save it, and now we have our entries show up in applications. We click on it, and we got a big bunch of nothing, and that's because there's nothing really defined inside of our dashboard. If you go and hover into the lower right corner, this is where the edit cog shows up. You want to click on your edit cog and say edit dashboard. That's going to bring up an empty space. We're going to say I want to add a dashlet, and in this case I want to add a custom URL. So in the custom URL, this is where you're going to put in the URL information for your Netdata Cloud URL. So here I just told it to use the dev room as a starting spot for when you do click on this. We're going to run to the URL, contents of its own frame. We'll give it a custom title, Netcloud 2. Alright, and then we'll save. And once you do that, this is what your dashboard is going to look like. But of course, this is a tiny little window. So if we click on the resizers, by default they will expand out. You just click on each one of them, they'll expand clear to the vertical and the horizontal. Exactly what we want, so we have to do it because this is just going to take up the entire page of our dashboard. And then we're just going to stop edit. That effectively saves our data. So now if we go to Netdata Cloud 2, it pulls up the entry to the dashboard. And that's pretty much it. So basically loose integration of Netdata information into Checkmk. Netdata focusing on real time, and Checkmk focusing on what it does best, long term and alerting information. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.